What's up everyone, this is Ember, and this video is basically a compilation of clips from my seasonal wrap-up show series and my movie reviews, just so I could put my top 10 anime from 2022 in one video, now that I'm finally caught up on stuff from last year. If you want to see my thoughts on other shows from 2022, like the ones that you are currently seeing on screen right now, or ones that I ended up dropping, you can go check out my backlog of videos on this channel for that. Anyways, there will be a special sort of data recap at the end of this video as well, but for now, let's jump into the list.
Alright, I just watched all of Call of the Night. Had a damn good fun time with that one. As I just said a little earlier, I'm pretty deep into the manga with this one. I've not been reading the scans. I only read manga physically, so I'm as far into it as the physical releases are, which I think is about 9 volumes. So having a real fun time with this one, and I would say that this is the anime is a pretty faithful adaptation in terms of like capturing the soul of the manga and what it's about, while also being an anime and allowing for it to express itself in this specific medium. One of the more obvious ways it does that is with the color design, which is very vibrant, almost too vibrant in a sense. I think overall, I think it was a great choice to portray the night in such a vibrant, technicolor way that's just explosive to look at all the time. But it just, ever so slightly, it sometimes is just a little too much on the eyes. Can be a little too garish sometimes. But on the whole, I think it was a great decision to do that. And it's another sort of side consequence of that is the character designs and like the character models don't always fit with these very illustrative backgrounds. They don't always quite match in terms of lighting and stuff like that. Although I did notice that it got better with that as the series went on. So I guess they decided to like be a little more consistent with the lighting of the character models, I guess. But yeah, overall the show looks great, which I did not expect from, I think this is Leiden Films, I think. They're not a studio I expect a ton of great looking stuff from. But man, they pulled it off. Fucking great character designs. The few action scenes that this show has looked phenomenal. The character acting was really great. Some of the more like artsy moments where it starts to get more ambitious with and a little more like out there with how it portrays the character designs and like the line work and all that was really good. The like vampire attack scene in like episode 11, I think it is, what in particular was really good, and just the color design in general for that episode was so fucking incredible. Yeah, this is a fucking great looking show, and it's probably one of the sexiest shows I've seen all year. Like, that's another thing about the manga is that it is erotic in a very, like, it's not extremely ecchi. Like, I would say this borders on being an ecchi anime, but I would not call it that, because that's not really the focus of it. It just has erotic moments in it, and those moments are very sexy. I think the manga is just ever so slightly better at it, but the anime really pulls it off a lot of the time too. Most of my complaints about this show are very minor nitpicks, and I guess my minor nitpick for this is like sometimes it like cuts away from the moments a little too soon. But overall, this is a very attractive looking show. But it's not all just style with this one. This is actually a surprisingly deep show from the guy who wrote the Takashi Kashi, the candy anime from like, God, what was that, like 6 years ago now? Jesus Christ. Might have actually been more than that, I'm not sure. It's been so long. But yeah, this is the same author as that one, and I was not a big fan of the Kashi. I just didn't find it very funny or interesting. But this one, love the writing for this one a lot more. I think it's generally a lot funnier than the Kashi. The and just the characters in general are a lot more likable. Still just as neurotic in a lot of ways. Often more neurotic, especially because we got all these fucking crazy vampire people. But I think the nuances of it, the specifics of it, are a lot more fine-tuned in this one. I love everyone on this cast. There's not a single character in this show that I dislike. And just the way that they interact, be it human and human, vampire and vampire, human and vampire, they all have these very different, very interesting interactions with each other, and it makes this world feel very cohesive and very intricate in how these people interact with each other. And that definitely goes a long way in helping along with the themes of the series as well, which it has a surprising amount of. Most notably, it has this idea of like focusing in on what exactly love is, because like the premise of this show is our protagonist Ko meets a vampire, Nazuna. But the way that vampires turn humans into other vampires in this show is that the humans have to fall in love with the vampire, and then the vampire sucks their blood. And so Ko makes it his duty to fall in love with Nazuna so that she can turn him. And it has some pretty just generally interesting ideas on what love is, what friendship is, how relationships work with each other, with amongst different people. Like, especially the friendship thing. Like, there's a lot of there were a couple moments earlier in the series where it was like Ko was like, I didn't really have any friends, and then a bunch of like his former friends come out of the woodworks and be like, hey buddy, what's up? And it's just the realization of like, oh, I guess I did have friends, I just didn't understand that was the relationship that I had. It's a lot like I think it's episode 10 of A Place Further Than the Universe. Episode 10. With Yuzuki, who's easily my favorite character from the show. I did a whole video about that way back, so if you want to go look on the main channel for that, you can. That part definitely struck a chord with me, and just the general idea of like what exactly defines love, I guess. We haven't really fully answered that question yet, because Ko still hasn't fallen in love with Nazuna by the end of the season, or even by the point that I've gotten to in the manga. But it does have these very interesting conversations about it, and just generally the conversations across the board are very interesting, and just the way that it dives into these characters and the psychology of these characters and how they interact in this multi-species society is really interesting. I think that's pretty much like the biggest appeal of this show in general. Just really solid characters interacting with each other and exploring these kinds of themes in really interesting ways. And just the general vampire society, quote unquote, is pretty interesting as well, in that it's just so fluid and not structured, I guess. Like, there is no real structure to the vampire world that they have. It's just a collective of vampires that just kind of hang out with each other and have like these oral rules on how they should operate, I guess. and the consequences for breaking those rules are pretty interesting, and with the shit that Nazuna ends up getting herself into because of her very weird relationship with Ko. I guess the one thing I should at least acknowledge is that for as fun as this show is and as cool as the characters are, the premise is admittedly problematic. I mean, I forgot exactly how old Nazuna is, but she is several decades old at this point. And Ko is 14. And so she's just going ahead and letting him fall in love with her. And they do kiss several times in this series, which is another thing that puts this a step above a lot of romance anime. I don't even know if I would define this roughly as a romance. I would not put romance I would not plaster this series with the idea of I'm going to recommend this as a romance anime. It does have romance elements in it, but I don't think that's the super main thrust of the series, just because it's got so many ideas that it explores all at once. But anyway, it is problematic. I'm not really sure what to do with that information because the show is just so incredibly fun to watch. But, it doesn't even do she looks like a child, but she's actually 500 years old. No, it's just a 14-year-old human boy making out with a adult vampire. I believe. I'm pretty sure. I don't exactly remember what Nazuna's age is. Especially because there's backstory in the manga that is not explored in the anime yet that I'm not going to spoil you on. But for the time being, as the anime puts it, this is a very problematic relationship. So do with that what you will. But overall, I had a damn blast with this show. It is a fun fucking time. Would highly recommend it. Alright, I just binged all of Takagi-san Season 3. Actually, I binged Seasons 2 and 3 because I had actually dropped the second season right when it first started, but I decided to give this show another chance. Just on a whim, really, and also based on what everyone's been saying about Season 3. And I actually really liked Season 2. I don't know why I dropped it last time. I guess I was just kind of bored or something. I think that was in my one of my Blitzkrieg videos, actually, where it was the one where it went to Netflix jail or whatever. But, yeah, I loved Season 2. That was some good shit. The two seasons are starting to bleed together in my head, but overall, I am continuously shocked by this franchise, not only in how entertaining it is, but also this is one of the few anime nowadays where each season has better production value than the previous season. Nowadays with anime, it's just sort of you get into this sequel rut where the seasons wear on and the staff just gets tired of making it, and it just gets dragged out, and the anime's already over fucking burdened with production issues in general. But this one, and I guess Kaguya-sama are the exceptions where it's the sequels actually keep getting better. There's not only some really fucking solid animation in this, and also this season 3 definitely has the least amount of jank. The previous seasons of Takagi kind of had some pretty notable jank moments in it. But this season not only has the least amount of jank, but it also has some of the best pieces of animation and the best cinematography and color work and just general presentation. I never thought I would say this, but Takagi-san has become a good-looking show. This is a pretty good-looking show. there's still a couple awkward staging, blocking moments here and there, but overall, I'm surprised at how far this franchise has come, visually and narratively, because I've actually covered Takagi-san twice in videos before. Once in the Blitzkrieg, and the other was when I did the first season of 12 Days of Anime, where I compared it to Pop Team Epic in terms of being a adaptation of a comedy manga. Where I was like, look at Pop Team Epic doing all this awesome, weird, inventive shit that makes it way stronger than its source material. And then over here we have Takagi-san just kind of being a standard, kind of uninventive adaptation. And I would still... I haven't seen Season 1 in a while, but from what I remember about it, I would still stand by that about Season 1. Season 1 is... it's not bad, but it's a super straightforward adaptation of the manga. And from what I've heard, Seasons 2, and even more so Season 3, is where the production team starts to take more narrative risks and narrative liberties with the source material, where it actually starts adding in anime original stuff to make this story stronger, to make the through line of Nishikata and Takagi growing closer to each other stronger. And Season 3 had so many fucking good moments of this. The play scene. I fucking love when anime does the school festival and then they do a ripoff of Romeo and Juliet. Fucking love that shit. Give me all of that all the time. Loved it in Nisekoi. Loved it in Cardcaptor Sakura. Give me more of this shit. I loved it in Takagi-san. It's good. The Christmas episode was so fucking good. The last two episodes where they really actually put the gas on the drama a little bit and put some serious tension in it was really engrossing, and you really want these two to get together. They're just so fucking perfect for each other. It's great. But we also have the roadblock of Nishikata really does not get that Takagi is super into him, and in a lesser show that would be a negative, because how do you not tell with how many fucking hints she keeps dropping? But also, Nishikata is a bona fide idiot. So it does make... well, in certain ways. In other ways, he's very creative and inventive, but in general, he's presented as not a super intelligent or quick-witted guy. Except when it comes to Takagi teasing him and him, trying to get an advantage over her. But I like how Nishikata's personality is constructed. Yeah, all of the characters in this is super likable. I've even really come to love the Three Stooges trio of girls in this, who I really did not care for at all in Season 1, but they've really grown on me so far. And just the whole ensemble in general, the way they flesh out different romances and stuff with Hojo and Hamaguchi, I think his name is. And then we have the other two, whose names I forget. Shows we get a variety of different relationships, and that's really cool. What else was I gonna say? Oh, the fucking voice acting in this show might be some of the best voice acting that I've ever seen from anime. Definitely from comedy anime. Some of the best voice acting I've ever seen. Because we have Ria Takahashi as Takagi, who I believe is also Megumin in Konosuba, and she just absolutely nails this fucking part. This calm, collected Takagi. But we also get those moments where she breaks a little bit, just a little, for a fraction of a second, and you catch it in her voice, and it's so fucking perfect. And meanwhile, we have fucking Yuki Kaji being Nishikata, fucking Eren from Attack on Titan, which aired during this same season. We had Attack on Titan Final Season Part 2 airing during Takagi Season 3. So you had those two extremes of voice acting. This dude is a fucking titan of the voice acting world at this point, and he really struts his stuff with Nishikata. There's a lot of variance in his performance, a lot of breadth, a lot of flexibility, just good shit. I really fucking like this show. It is cute and wholesome and fucking hilarious and just so goddamn fun to watch. I am so excited for the movie. I hope the movie goes like full anime original or takes at least a couple things from the manga, but goes mostly anime original and just ends the story. Like, we've been getting flash forwards. I know there's like a manga spin-off of Takagi-san where it shows them in the future that are married, I guess. And we've been getting flashes of that throughout season 2 and 3. And I hope the movie just just ends on the relationship, like getting into the relationship. Because, like, I could definitely watch more seasons of Takagi-san if they keep being this good. But I think with the announcement of a movie, I think now would be the perfect time to just hit it out of the park with a big, solid finale. I'm fine if it's not that, but I think now is the time to just really nail it. So, yeah, that's Takagi-san Season 3. Fucking loved it. This show just keeps getting better and better with each season, which is super surprising. If you like wholesome rom-coms, give it a go. This is good shit. Holy shit, that movie fucking ruled. That was goddamn incredible. And 55 minutes of just awesome spy thriller action stuff. This might be the peak of the franchise so far for me. Okay, so, like, in the first, 6 minutes of this film, it was, okay, we have nukes now, but they're also apparently steam-powered nukes because they're really committing to the steampunk bit, which fucking rules. They have nukes. Then the OP happened, and then, there's, a parade in the town square or whatever, and, the Archduke is, saying hi to everybody, and me and my dumb brain's going, there must be, a pissed-off Serbian in the crowd right now, and then I saw, a sniper up on a rooftop. I'm like, wait, no, I was joking, holy shit. So, yeah, this movie was intense. Fucking cool, man. You have a reference to nukes and a reference to the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand in the first 6 minutes of the film. It's fucking wild. And the rest of the film was pretty goddamn fun too. Just real tight spy thriller, constantly leading you down different directions. It's not super complex, but it's enough to keep your mind busy the entire time. And it's just so incredibly thrilling and tight-paced. Fucking love it. The action scenes are so damn good in this, so polished, which originally, when I was, in the first, the first act-ish, it's kind of, it'd be a stretch to say that this movie is divided into acts. It's only 55 minutes. But, the first part of this movie, some of the compositing was a little rough, in some areas. Some stuff didn't look quite right, but once it really got going with all the action and stuff, it was just all in, just really polished animation, really polished camera work. Man, this was thrilling and awesome. Not a whole lot to say about the characters, because it's kind of just continuing what happened in the last movie. Honestly, I remember absolutely nothing about the last movie, except the fact that, one of the characters', mentors was assassinated. And I believe that assassin shows up, is this assassin in this movie, who plays a pretty pivotal role in the plot of this one. I'm actually going to like reinforce the fact that these videos are spoiler heavy. If you haven't seen Princess Principal yet, or if you haven't seen the second Crown Handler movie yet, go watch it. It's fucking fun as hell. And there's a really awesome twist at the end of this movie that it was just super fun. But anyway, not a whole lot on the character front, except we find, I don't remember if we saw a lot of Princess Mary before in the series, but we get a lot more of her now as she's like kind of coming into the spotlight as a member of the royal family. And the way that Princess Charlotte interacts with her and tries to like help her be a little more brave with her roles as a member of the royal family was pretty nice. Aside from that, really fun characters doing really fun things. I love the cast of this series. They're not like incredibly complex to any degree, but they're just, the chemistry they have is just so tight and really fun. And there's rarely any moments where I'm like, that was kind of a dumb thing that happened. Like, it doesn't really have that. It's a fairly smart series in terms of like moving the plot forward. Like, there were some moments where it's like the big climax of the movie, the fire hose that they used to yank the bomb out of the boiler room, that's a pretty goddamn tough fire hose. So, like, hey, I don't know how tough fire hoses are. Maybe they are super tough. I don't know. But that was the one moment where I was like, that seems a little bit outside the realm of suspension of disbelief. Like, but that was like the one time. Otherwise, really fucking fun movie. And the twist at the end, again, spoilers, the twist at the end where it's actually the Archduke who almost got assassinated at the beginning of the film turns out to be the mastermind behind all of this. He ends up getting his older brother killed. He tried to have Mary killed with the bomb on the boat. And now he's like got Charlotte in a corner asking her which side she's going to be on. And you get like a little hint of it as he's coming out of his grandmother's room. Like, you can see him like kind of you think he's like crying at first after his brother's like been killed, but then you can see he's actually laughing, and then Charlotte catches him, and it was just so fucking cool and fun. I love this franchise. I can't believe there's still 4 more of these movies. It's gonna take so long for this franchise to wrap up. It's gonna be like 2026 by the time this franchise is over. But, well, I think the 3rd movie came out in Japan at the beginning of April, so hopefully we get that by the end of the year. Hopefully. That would be nice. But yeah, man, go watch Princess Principal. It's a super fun series. It's probably the best thing Studio 3 Hertz has ever done. Which isn't a hype. Well, actually, no, because they did, I think they did Healer Girl. Yeah, so unfortunately, Healer Girl is the best thing that 3 Hertz has ever done. But Princess Principal's definitely up there. This is a real fun series. Would highly recommend. Alright, I just finished all of Bocchi the Rock. That was a hell of a fun time. I don't think there was any question at all that I was going to enjoy this series. It's fun. It's a fun slice of life music show. Speaking of that, let's just jump right into that. The music, pretty dang solid for this one. It's not like super stand out in term, like it's pretty standard like J-rock with yeah, just kind of a light feel to it. But I did like the songs. I did like them quite a lot. Like the first ED Distortion, I think it is. Fucking love that. That's the hook on that is so goddamn good. I was just like banging my head to it the whole time, just tapping my foot, just so catchy and upbeat. And going along with that, the music performances were really solid too. Especially, I liked when the way that it portrayed like not good performances. Like they felt like very realistic not good performances. Like that, just like when the band's like not playing together, or if someone's just like out of it or something. It was, I really liked the presentation of that. And when the band is like together and really good, man, they're really fucking good. Like I think it's episode 8 would probably be my favorite performance. Just the Bocchi solo lead-in was just so dang powerful. Really loved the visual portrayal of these performances was really solid too. Just so incredibly detailed with the fingering and the movement of the characters and the instruments and all of that. That stuff was so fucking good. There were a few moments where it felt like a little bit off, mostly just because it was just doing so much all the time. Which is something that I definitely have to commend this series for. It is so immensely ambitious in what it is trying to do. This is easily one of the best looking shows of 2022. I would put it up, like, especially in terms of, like, being ambitious with its presentation. Like, I'm trying to think of, like, the other, like, best looking, like, just in terms of sheer ambition, like, One Piece Film Red, I would put it up there with that. Really, in terms, like, this, I wouldn't say, like, the overall animation is movie quality, but the risks that it takes with the animation is definitely movie quality, and it really shoots for it a lot of the time. The character acting in the show is so goddamn good, so bouncy and like light. It really like it's like that, a really nice blend of like realism and things you can only do in animation, movements where you can only make it look cool with animation. Just the bounciness of the characters, the expressions, the constant style breaks, even within the like traditional like drawn 2D medium, and then of course outside of the traditional 2D medium, it's so like, what doesn't this show do? Like, I think the only thing it doesn't do that I'm familiar with is like paint on glass animation. But there actually is one scene where I think it might have done that. I'm not entirely sure though. But like, it does stop motion, it does live action, it does all of these weird abstract breaks. It does like the stick puppet things from episode 9. Is it 18 or 19 of? I think it's episode 19 of Kaguya-sama with like the stick puppets. It does that for a little bit, and a lot of these like break moments feel very like music video-esque in a lot of ways. Like there's this scene of like Bocchi just kind of doing like a walking animation, and like the backdrop faded in is like shots of like the water and like a bird soaring, and it's like, this just feels like a really like cheesy music video, and I love it. The visual like metaphors are so fucking good, just the way it like, it's really hard to describe just how this show does everything. It really does, in terms of like the animation. It really does do everything. Um, and there are a few trade-offs, like sometimes it has like a total lack of attempt to composite things, like the guitar store at the very in the last episode is probably the best example of this, where it's like very clearly just the characters on top of the guitar store backdrop. But that's like a stylistic choice in anime at this point that like people that a lot of especially slice of life shows go out of their way to make it look like that. Like they do it in A Place Further Than the Universe. They do it in Comic Girls. So it's not. It's just something I'm personally not like a fan of. So I would much rather them look like they are in the shop. But the shop still looks cool. So I'll give it that. Yeah, goddamn. This is definitely a feast for the eyes kind of show. Supported by some pretty solid character writing too. Really, I liked Bocchi quite a lot. She definitely stands out from the typical like disaster moe blob ball of social anxiety character archetype. Like she's definitely in the vein of someone like Kaos from Comic Girls, or Shamiko from Machikado Mazoku. But I do like that she has like this kind of hidden arrogance to her in some ways, like where that only comes out in like very specific situations, where she's like, oh well, if I just do this thing, then of course everyone's going to like me. And then obviously that doesn't follow through, and then she gets massively depressed in very hilarious ways. The ways that Bocchi just breaks throughout this entire series are very funny. Like even up to the very end with that like puppet bit at the end, so fucking funny. Yeah, just really liked Bocchi as a character, and seeing her like grow just a little bit by the end of this series. Like very small but noticeable baby steps as this series goes on. And I'd like that she is like comes together under the right kind of pressure character. It reminds me of like I'm not a particularly social guy myself. I do have a bit of trouble just talking to people a lot of times, but like there were moments in the show where it reminded me of when I was at my first job at a fast food place, food place, and one of the guys who had been there longer told me, he's like, you really like come together under pressure. Like when there's just a bunch of orders, I would just like buckle down and just immediately just like pace everything out the way that it would be most efficient. And so, but like Bocchi's like under pressure moments remind me of that a little bit. So that I found that extremely relatable in this, like in episode 8 when she just busts out that solo when the band is like starting to fall apart just to revitalize everybody. So I found that really enjoyable. Love the whole cast of this show. The two different brands of bubbly brightness between Nijika and Kita. Ryo is so cool and so fun. She's like Rin from Yuru Camp, but like cooler and goofier in some ways, but like less extroverted also, or less introverted, I should say. Actually, no, she's not like Rin at all. It's probably just the blue hair that made me think of that. But she was an absolute delight. Loved all the side characters. What's the drunk's name? Kikuri. I understand why the internet loves her now, even though she barely shows up in this show. Like, she's got maybe like 3/4 of an episode of screen time, period. But she definitely leaves an impression. Oh, that was another. I loved like the psychedelic rock track that they play in that. So fucking fun. I wish we had gotten some punk rock in this. I would have loved to see some punk rock, some J-punk. But I'm happy with the tracks that we got. Is there anything else I want to say about the story? Not particularly. I mean, it's just like, the story is a pretty straightforward slice of lifey music, cute girls do cute things show. Obviously this, everyone knows this already, but this show is first and foremost an animation spectacle. That's not to say that the writing is bad or anything, but the animation just massively overpowers anything from the story. There were like a few gripes I had with the story in some places. Like, in particular in the first episode, I was hoping that it would be Bocchi who would would be kind of forced to initiate an interaction with Nijika. Because like a whole big chunk of the episode is her just waiting for other people to notice her, and then nothing happens. So I would have liked that change a little bit more. But yeah, aside from that, good show. I think maybe almost a year of hype now that I've put off watching this show has maybe built it up a little too much for me, because, like, again, this is a really damn good show, but, like, I don't know where I'm gonna I don't know if this will break, like, top 5 for the year for me. It'll definitely be top 10. I'm pretty sure of that, but, well, you know what? Let's go to the list and find out. Alright, I just got back from seeing Inu-Oh in theaters, and that was a heck of a good time. I really enjoyed that movie. Though, I must admit, this is my second attempt at trying to see this movie, because I went to go see it last night, the night of its general premiere, and the theater had a blackout. And it just kept having intermittent blackouts, and eventually the movie just would not get going, so it was just like, okay, I'm just gonna come and see it the next day. And so here I am, and man, what an experience this was. This is the new theatrical release by critically acclaimed director Masaaki Yuasa. You might know him from Devilman Crybaby, Ping Pong, Tatami Galaxy. I think it was Tatami Galaxy, I'm pretty sure that's who it was. Just whole spread of very artsy, very abstract, breaking out of the box kind of anime, and this is very much in that same vein. So the general story of this is we have two main characters. We have Tomona, I think was his name. Tomona, later known as Tomoichi, later known as Tomoari. He changes his name quite a few times, but anyway, this guy, born the son of just a common family who, through a supernatural occurrence, is blinded and eventually becomes a biwa player with a group of priests. And on the other end, we have Inu-Oh, who is this basically demon child who's like born this monstrous form from his mother and just grows up as this grotesque thing and falls in love with dancing. I don't know what the particular style of dancing is. They say it a lot in the movie, but I just don't remember what it was. That's going to be... I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on ancient Japanese history and ancient Japanese art forms for this review, because I'm not. But that is one of the core elements of this film. It's a very deep historical drama with some fantasy elements woven into it. So if that's your game, like if you like stuff like Heike Monogatari, you're going to love this. In fact, in a way, this is almost like you could... very loosely view this as a sequel to Heike Monogatari because part of this film's plot revolves around retelling the tale of the Heike, and all of the different battles and stories that go along with it. So, in a weird way, it is kind of fortuitous that Science Saru did both of these productions, though Heike Monogatari was directed by Naoko Yamada, who I would say is very different in style from Masaaki Yuasa. But the similarities are definitely there. So if you want to do like a double feature of like binging Heike Monogatari, then just jumping right into this, I think that would be kind of an interesting experience. But for this movie in particular, I was just blown away at how immediate everything is. Like, there's basically two major segments to this film, and then like a little epilogue-ish segment. The first segment is basically just all set up. It's all like the lead up to Tomoichi/Tomari. I'm just gonna call him Tomari because that's what he decides to call himself in this film eventually. Tomari and Inu-Oh eventually meet and combine their different artistic talents in this film, Tomari being the biwa player and Inu-Oh being the dancer, both of them being fucking phenomenal singers. I wanted to look up who the voice actors and singers were for this, but I forgot to do that before I started recording. But let it be known that they are absolutely incredible in their performances. But the first part of this film is basically just non-stop build-up and setup and so many things happening in the lead-up to these two characters meeting, and it's just so incredibly well-paced, incredibly captivating. Like, there's really hardly any moments of downtime in the lead-up to these two meeting. And then shortly after they meet, we get the other, probably bigger appeal of this movie is that this movie has been described in a sort of press release as a rock opera for the ages. And let me tell you, that is 100% what the second half of this movie is. It is just straight up rock performances in the form of ancient Japanese music. Though admittedly the actual instrumentation is very much like a rock band. Just this very heavy, heavy strumming guitar that's just got this very plodding, very deliberate pace to it. And man, these musical segments in this second half are insane. Like, I'm pretty sure that one of them lasts like 15 to 20 minutes straight. Like, it's that insane. That is the level of rock opera that this film is on. It is just, I don't want to call it pure spectacle because it does weave in a lot of the tale of the Heike into these performances, a lot of these quote-unquote forgotten tales, but I would definitely say that the main appeal of these segments is the spectacle, which, depending on how you view Yuasa, is either very on-brand or not very on-brand at all. Personally, I think it's a little mix of both. But these are just these absolutely bombastic and spectacular performance pieces, this performance art, as it were. Like, they really do some cool things with the technology for the time and how that technology might be used to create some facsimile of a modern rock concert with like laser light shows and projection mapping and different stage effects and just different like objects coming out of the stage and just different stuff like that. As the film goes on, they start to dress more and more like the ancient Japanese equivalent of what like a modern rock star would look like. Like, they're showing more and more skin. their hair's getting longer. At one point, like, one of the priests describes Tomari as dressing like a prostitute, which is kind of like reminiscent of how like kind of like glam metal bands that we had in like the 80s and 90s, where they would very much dress like women. So it's kind of got that cool like bucking off gender norms kind of stuff to it too, that music is so good at doing, and just musical performances are so good at doing. And it's just this incredible mixture of different ideas and just spectacle all woven into these really captivating performances that, like, there's just so many different things from like classic rock bands that I could see, like and just classic. I feel old now for describing it as classic, but there's a little, like, there was the way that Inu-Oh danced in one particular scene reminded me a lot of like Michael Jackson in a certain ways. It's weird to be describing that as classic at this point, but I mean, it was the 80s. So you see a little bit of that. There's a little bit of like Elvis. Again, you got like the glam metal, the heavy metal kind of bands woven in there. There's a little bit, there was one segment that felt very much like Queen or David Bowie, a little bit of Pink Floyd thrown in there. This is just a mishmash of just rock and roll in ancient Japan, and it's a very cool combo. For the most part, they mesh the two styles pretty well, though during the actual rock segments, I would say the rock instrumentation very much takes over as opposed to the biwa instrumentation, the more classical stuff. But they do still use the biwa and other classical Japanese instruments in very strong, very powerful ways. They really draw out the best of all the instrumentation involved and all of the visual spectacle involved. I mean, it's Masaaki Yuasa. He is an extremely visual director. There is so much color, so much vibrance, so much movement, so much interesting framing, so much interesting compositing and layering to all the different frames in this film, that it's just a marvel to watch, especially in like as we near like the end of the film, during like the final performance, the final big performance. It's just, I'm on the edge of, literally on the edge of my seat in the theater, because it's all coming to a head, not just with the masterful performance of it all, but also with the underlying plot going in the background, because there is still plot going on underneath all of these performances, because we have this little bit of the shogunate not exactly liking that this new guy is coming out with these new tales of the Heike, the tales of this clan that is sort of supposed to stay hidden for the most part in Japanese history. I mean, the Heike are the losers in this scenario. So we have Inu-Oh and Tomari coming out with these new tales to add to the legacy of the Heike, and the shogunate's not particularly happy about it, so it kind of weaves into that, like, oh, this is the new musical style and the old generation doesn't like it. And it does that in a very believable and interesting way. It doesn't feel like they crowbarred that message in. It feels very natural and organic. And it leads to an ending that I have some thoughts about. I'm not going to spoil anything about the ending, but it's a little more bittersweet than I was hoping for. It logically makes sense with how the story was going. I'm not saying it's not like that or anything. It's just I was hoping for a slightly different outcome. But again, there is some of that bittersweetness to this ending that very much makes sense in the context of the story. And I think my one issue with it is just they just a tad more like lead up to that particular ending, because after the bombast of this final performance, it does feel like it comes a little bit out of nowhere. But aside from that, just a generally all around really fascinating film with some well, there's not a whole lot of characterization involved in this film. Like, it's pretty bare bones, but it does give you what it needs. It gives you what it needs to understand Tomorari and where he's coming from with his scenario. Even more so with Inu-Oh and how he is developing through this, how this curse has affected him and how he is coming to terms with that throughout the film. So, just a generally incredible performance, and of course, with this being a heavily sound-oriented production, the sound design in particular is just really solid and on point. It reminds me of, like, it's kind of like the exact opposite of what Naoko Yamada did with Liz and the Bluebird, where that's very, like, subtle, very quiet, but still very noticeable sound design changes, choices that are very crucial to, like, the tone of the film. This was the exact opposite. These very big, heavy, bombastic sound design choices that are very in your face and very palpable throughout the film, but it never feels out of place. It never feels like it's trying too hard. It just has this incredible rhythm to it that I just absolutely adored. So yeah, really enjoyed this film. Would absolutely love to watch it again just for the spectacle of it all. And also, this and Heike Monogatari I want to come back to after I actually learn a bit more about ancient Japanese history. Obviously, both of these are very much fictional retellings of these. In fact, I think Inu-Oh in particular is just a fictional story at large. Like, it obviously has some roots in Japanese history, but at least from the implication of what's said in the film, this is a mostly fictional scenario. So, I don't think I'm going to learn too much about Japanese history that would inform me of this, but there are a lot of things, like about the sacred regalia, about the shogunate, about the Heike, that I think would very much inform me a lot more for a rewatch of this film. So, yes, would highly recommend seeing this film. I think it's actually in theaters all weekend, if I remember correctly. So definitely go out and see this if you were skeptical about seeing it. I'm going to give this one, man, I think this is like a strong 8 to a light 9, somewhere in that range. I don't think it's not my favorite Yuasa project so far. I think I would still put Ping Pong and Tatami Galaxy above this, but it is definitely my favorite Yuasa project since Ping Pong, which, now that I think about it, has been, what, like 8 years now? Was that 2014, I think? So, it's been like 8 years since Ping Pong. Man, time really do fly, huh? But yeah, definitely go out and see this film. Would highly recommend it. Alright, I just got back from One Piece Film Red. I just saw it in theaters on opening night. Man, what a movie. That was a heck of a movie. Just damn incredible. I'm blown away by this movie. Just as a brief, I guess, overview of where I'm at as a One Piece fan, I'm actually kind of new to this franchise relatively, although I have been making my way through it. I'm on the 4th box set of the manga right now, and I'm about halfway through Whole Cake Island. So, not caught up yet, but pretty close. I will say this movie does have at least some minor spoilers if you're not all the way through Whole Cake, is what I've noticed. But honestly, that's not going to affect your viewing of it. I will say, though, there is going to be a spoiler section at the end of this video because I simply can't talk about a good bulk of this movie without spoiling a twist that happens at the end of the first act. Like, it's that early on. I gotta be honest, the marketing for this, the trailers have done a fantastic job of not telling you a goddamn thing about this movie other than there's an idol in it. It's really dang good marketing. I applaud them for that. But before we get to that, let's talk about that, the idol stuff. This is basically, if you threw Love Live into One Piece. Like, this isn't just like, oh, she has one or two songs here and there. This is a musical movie, almost. There are, I believe, at least 6 songs that play during the movie proper, plus the credit song at the end. And all of those songs get, like, I think, except for one, I think all of those songs get dedicated, basically music video segments. Again, kind of like Love Live. And the fucking directing for these sequences is immensely just so fucking good. This is, I believe, it was Goro Taniguchi who directed this film. I believe he's the Code Geass director. And just the way this film looks is so impressive on so many levels technically, especially during these music video sequences. Just the explosive use of color and the framing, the designs of the characters, the way that the designs shift art styles through these music video sequences. I've made if you've been following my seasonal wrap-up series, I've made a lot of comments about what I call Technicolor vomit, and when it's used correctly versus when it's not. Most of the time, people don't tend to use it well. This movie is an example of when it's used really well. The color direction for this movie, not even just in the video, not just in the music video sequences, in the movie in general, is just so vibrant and explosive and lively, and it just makes you like well up inside with like excitement and happiness. This is such a very cool looking film. And even on like the more negative ends of emotion, and in fact I would say the negative emotional ends are even more impressive. There's the way it really drills into you with this incredible darkness that One Piece always manages to just throw at you out of nowhere. One Piece has this like tendency to kind of lull you into a false sense of security almost with how wacky the comedy hijinks are, and then all of a sudden it just throws something immensely dark at you, but it still manages to make it fit, and this movie does that really well. We'll get into that a bit later, but the art direction for those particular moments is just so on point. The use of digital effects to create some stuff that I honestly have not seen in anime before is just truly remarkable. This is probably the most experimental shonen spin-off film I've ever seen. And it is all to its benefit. This was an incredible looking movie. And even in just the stuff that's more plainly animated, it's just really fun to look at. Like, especially, this is One Piece in a post-Wano art style. Like, we've got some of the best animation that One Piece has ever seen. The fight sequences in this film are incredible. There's just something about the pacing of it, the editing and the cutting of it that just makes it so intense and non-stop. And that's sort of what the film overall, too. This is a very non-stop kind of film, with the exception of like one or two very brief moments. This film never slows down once that first act twist gets underway. It is just so tightly paced. This did not feel like 2 hours at all. Like, maybe at the very, very end I just started to notice it, but this did not feel like a 2-hour movie at all, even though it was almost a 2-hour movie. And aside from the visuals, even on the audio end, this is just so incredibly impressive. I mean, listen, if you're gonna make a film centered around an idol, you better come prepared with some solid singing. Fortunately, they got Ado to do the singing voice for Uta, who is the idol character in this film. And I only knew about Ado through one song before this, and I only knew about that one song because it was covered by Mori Calliope. And that song is awesome. I actually do prefer the auto version of it. But that only gave me kind of a taste of Otto. I'm like, okay, this is a singer that has a pretty strong voice. It's good casting. I was unprepared for how fucking good Otto is for these fucking songs. Like, within the first like few notes of her singing, I felt this sensation of power and just the power of this movie well up inside me. I was tearing up within the first song. That is how good her voice is for this music that's been composed for her. It is so I'm blown away. I just bought the entire album for this movie before I started recording this on iTunes because I absolutely have to have these songs. In particular, Backlight is probably my favorite from this, and whichever one came after Backlight, I'm not sure which one that was off the top of my head, but I'll definitely know it a lot later. As a mild critique, though, I will say that there is a very noticeable difference between Otto and the regular voice acting voice for Uta, which I believe is done by Kaori Nakana, I think. Something along that lines. Now, I'm not saying Kaori is bad. In fact, she's just as good at voice acting as Otto is at singing. Like, she really nails Otto as a character across all emotional spectrums. And she's just damn good. But she does sound very different from Otto. So when there's a quick switch between the two, it really throws you off a little bit. So it is a noticeable critique, but both of them do such a damn good job at what they're doing that it's very easy for me to overlook. Let's see, aside from I guess in more general like plot and character stuff, it was really cool to see some characters from the. You know what? I might as well at this point just give a basic summary of what I thought about the plot before I jump into some spoilers post first act. I'm not going to spoil the entire film, but I do need to spoil one particular point. So I guess in general, this film has a lot to say about trauma, about how people relate to other people, and just how one's upbringing can shape you and how art can be used as a method of saving yourself from the darkness around you. And that, yeah, is just really great front to back. Another minor critique, I guess, I just remembered is because so much of the visual component is so good, the film does end up with some moments where it kind of feels like certain shots are just kind of afterthoughts. Like, there's all this really great framing or just intricate color design and like shot composition and movement, and then it'll just like cut to a still shot that slowly zooms in on the character, and it does that like 4 or 5 times in the film, that particular shot, that it just feels like they could have done something else with it. If I were to guess, I would just say they ran out of time when they were doing the other sequences, and since these were less important moments, they just kind of let them be more stereotypically anime in direction. So, a little bit of a letdown there, but it's not super noticeable throughout the whole film. It's just a few spots here and there. So, yeah, so that's my spoiler-free review of the film. We're going to jump into mild spoilers. I'm mostly just because I want to talk about stuff that's after the first act twist. But yeah, highly, highly recommend this film. If you're even tangentially familiar with One Piece, if you know how One Piece works, go watch this. It's a phenomenal film. Okay, so turns out Uta is actually the villain of the film. Again, marketing did a real great job at not forecasting that at all, because for the entire marketing campaign for this film, I thought Uta was going to be like a semi-damsel in distress kind of character, which thematically she kind of is, but also essentially at the first, there's a twist at the end of the first act. I'm using first act very loosely because I don't think this is really structured like that kind of film. But essentially, partway through this film, it's revealed that Uta is basically trying to trap everyone in a never-ending concert so that she can free the world from the strife of pirates, of the world government, of the corrupt navy, and just have everyone join her in this basically in this new world she's trying to create. And this immediately made her one of the most interesting characters I've ever seen from One Piece. And there are so many interesting characters in One Piece, but Uta, I gotta be honest, is one of my favorites now. The way she develops over this film, the way she kind of doubles down on this philosophy that she's trying to build up. It's a very simple, very childish philosophy, and that's kind of the point, because we find out in this film that she spends a lot of her youth completely isolated from the outside world, and that ends up making her ideology make a lot more sense, because she's basically turned into a sociopath to some degree. She doesn't understand why people are fighting against her. And this film goes out of its way to really go in depth into why she is feeling this way, the different parts of her life that have shaped her into being this way, her relationship with Luffy, her relationship with Shanks, her father. That's right, Shanks makes a brief appearance in this film, as you could tell by the poster. Not going to give anything away about that, but it is really damn cool. But just the way that Uta is so layered as a character, just the layers of contradiction and paradoxes in her ideology, the way she just constantly is forcing herself to double down in spite of the mounting evidence against her. And on top, but in the other end of that, just all of the reasons why she doubles down, why she continues to believe that what she's doing is right. This very quickly disintegrating psyche of hers into full-on madness. And also just her devil fruit power is just pretty cool. And they do have some really inventive ways of showing the different facets of that power. I love this character. I love her so much. And without spoiling it, the resolution to her character, I did not see coming at all. There was a point where I thought, no, they're not going to do that, are they? Um, I'll leave it at that. The ending to this film is easily one of the most memorable moments from any shonen movie I've ever seen. Like this, I'll just say it, hands down. This is the best shonen spin-off movie I've ever seen. No, this is the best shonen movie I've seen. Period. Like this tops Demon Train by or Infinity Train by a long shot. Sorry, Mugen Train. I forgot that they fucking did the half and half title for that. This tops Mugen Train by a long shot. This tops Boruto by a long shot. I think I'm actually one of the people who actually really likes the Boruto movie. It tops The Last by a long shot. This is and I think the only thing that I think could possibly compete with this is I have a soft spot for Fusion Reborn, the DBZ movie, although I haven't seen it in a decade, so I'm just going to go ahead and say that this is my new favorite shonen spin-off movie, even more than like Broly from a couple years ago. This is fucking incredible. Go out and see it, especially if you're a One Piece fan. I'm feeling a light 9 on this one. This was a damn good movie. Alright, I just watched all of Healer Girl, and that was fucking incredible. That was damn good show. I'm just gonna say right now, probably my favorite show of the year so far. It's really up there. Definitely some shows later in the list that might top it, but for now, I am just immensely impressed by this show. Right off the bat, this show has something that, as far as I know, really hasn't been done at all in anime before. Feel free to correct me in the comments, but this is, for as far as I can tell, the first musical anime, as in an anime that is a musical and operates on like musical logic and musical structure. Now, Love Live has done this to a certain degree before, where it will have the show go and then there will be like a musical segment in the middle of it that kind of operates on musical logic, but Healer Girl like takes it a step further and actually has like plot happen in musical segments. Like there are whole like multi-minute segments of each episode that are dedicated to like characters like saying dialogue, but they're singing it like it's a musical, and they're doing it in like that musical inflection, like that stage performer inflection. So as far as I know, this has not been done before in anime. Again, put links in the description if there is one that has done this before. And I will say, for the most, it's still tepid to a certain degree. It doesn't go like entire 100% musical all the time, because that would be insane for 4 hours of content. But it goes a lot farther than I thought it would. Like, the segments where they are, like episode 3 in particular, I think it's episode 3, where they're basically in their singing mode the whole time because they're super nervous about their provisional licenses. That was just an absolute blast to watch, and just seeing all the other characters get roped into the musical logic of it, just like having it slowly seep into their brains. It was just so fucking cool and very well executed. There's fireworks going off in the distance for some reason. I don't know why. It's not Labor Day, is it? Labor Day's not for a while. We're just gonna deal with that. Jesus Christ, really? But yeah, this was just so fun to watch, and the music is really fucking good for the most part. Like, now, my one like minor complaint about the music is like the actual like healing songs are kind of samey. They have the same general tone and genre and general like audio aesthetic to them, which logically makes sense. Like you kind of want to have a defined set of practices. If this is a legitimate medical field, then obviously there are going to like be certain guidelines on how to sing in order for patients to heal. I just wish there had just been like a little bit more variation. It's a nitpick for me, but because otherwise the songs are fucking great. I cried multiple times solely because the songs were so beautiful and so expertly arranged and composed and performed. And that's another thing. I thought for sure that these were like veteran voice actresses solely based on their singing talent, and just their ability to act and portray different emotions. But for the most part, these are entirely new voice actresses for our main trio. Their teacher is definitely a much more seasoned voice actress. I forgot what her name was, but she plays Erika in Durarara. That's the role I probably know her best from. But the main three, who play Kana, Riemi, and Hibiki, mostly unknown voice actresses. Like, the only role I recognized was that Hibiki's voice actress was Terra in Re-Slime, the blonde human lady, who, ironically, I did not like her voice acting in Slime. Like, she sticks out like a sore thumb in that show. But she's a lot better here. So I am very much surprised by the overall talent behind the voice acting and the singing for this show. In terms of audio, which might be the most important aspect of this show because it is a musical, it really fucking nails it. Aside from that, just the general, like, world... It's weird this is weird to say about a slice of life comedy musical, but the world building is really cool. Like, I kind of didn't really go into this as much yet, but basically the premise of the show is there's a new branch of medicine called healing, where you can basically heal different ailments with your voice. And the people who train in this branch of medicine are called healers. And they really integrate that concept of healing into modern medicine in really cool and believable ways. Like, without getting too much into the weeds of it, I should say. Because, like, you could get super in-depth with it and start to nitpick it, but the way they integrate it, the way that this practice is structured, the way that it relates to other medical practices, like, and how they conflict or bolster each other, is just so fucking cool and fascinating. And I'm just... See, this is the shit that I come to anime for. These really weird premises that are executed in really weird but really cool ways. This is what I come to anime for. And man, they fucking nailed it. Aside from the world building, I guess the plot is pretty straightforward. It's mostly episodic stories with these characters, but the characters are so solid. Not necessarily very complex. I mean, they do have some complexity to them. Hibiki in particular, like the inferiority complex that she kind of has in comparison to Ria, who she kind of grew up alongside, and Ria being this genius of the healing world. So that provided an interesting character building moment. But just the characters overall are so well realized in terms of their personalities and their role within the series, and they're just so damn likable that I just absolutely adored it. This cranky little haughty little Russian girl named Sophie, I think was her name, perfect antagonistic, like budding rivalry kind of vibes to her. Kana as the main girl, our Genki dumbass as of sorts. contrasted against Riemi, who's this very Ojo-san rich girl with a ton of like pedigree behind her. And then I already explained Hibiki as she's kind of like this backwater country bumpkin, but she has this she's had basically the semi-mentorship of a genius behind her in her past. Just all these different backgrounds coming together and interacting in really cool and interesting ways. With all of that coming into a head in episode 11, where they basically just get in a fight, three-way fight with each other, where they all have this kind of inferiority complex bursting out of them right before they have to take like essentially like their entry medical license exam, the C-level healing license, I think is what it's called. And they just sort of shout their feelings at each other for like 3 minutes straight. And it's just so fun and melodramatic and awesome. And I love it. I love all the fucking characters in this show. This show just is so incredibly nice and uplifting and wonderful. Especially in terms of like how it is visually presented. This is such an immensely ambitious project in how it is framed, in how it is animated, in how the shots are composed. Now, this anime was directed by Yasuhiro Irie, who is not a big name in terms of directing anime. He's done like 4 or 5 shows, but he's not really well known, except for one big show that you might have heard of. It's not too big. It's just a little show called Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. So, yeah, that's this guy. Honestly, I think his directing is better here, if I'm being honest, although I do have to rewatch Brotherhood. He also directed Alien 9, apparently, which is kind of cool. I like that show. This was a risky production. And from what I've seen, like in terms of the production stuff, like more than half of the episodes were solo key animated by different animators. So that's insane. But it really allows like for a consistent style to come through. Admittedly, it is rough in certain areas, like the compositing in particular, like the shots. There are some shots where the background and the characters just don't mesh as well as they could, but the things that they're able to do with the cinematography and how everything moves in the frame and how everything is composed in the frame, and the image segments, like one of the details of the show is that like when you're a healer, you have to have an image in your mind that you want to project onto the recipient of your healing. So the those images are just so beautiful and gorgeous. Another nitpick, I do wish there was more variation in the image that was produced, because a lot of times it just comes down to a grass field against a blue sky. That's sort of like the template for everything. Occasionally they go outside of that and create something different, especially when Ria, the genius teacher character, does stuff like her scene in episode 9, I think, the second surgery scene, just far and away the best visual representation in this entire show. Wish it had more of that, but again, it's a little nitpick. That's probably my biggest complaint overall about the show, aside from the animation inconsistencies, is that it could have done a little more to be more creative with its visualizations. Get a little more Food Wars-y with how explosive these visuals are. But yeah, the animation can be a little rough sometimes. In particular, it has the drifting eye problem. It's like sometimes the eyes get a little too far apart. Sometimes the eyes are not symmetrical in terms of like mirroring each other. So it's not a perfect looking production, but it is definitely a cool looking production. Again, there's just especially the way, because with this being musical logic, there's a lot of dance sequences as well. Well, so there's choreographed sequences is what I should say. And those scenes look fucking incredible, and they're just so tightly choreographed and fun. There are a couple editing issues as well too, just some weird cuts every now and then. In particular, like whenever it cuts to an OP or ED, or it cuts to the mid-episode eye catch, sometimes it's paced a little weird. Like like it wasn't ready for the cut sometimes. But that's really the only complaint I have on the editing front. And the fucking character designs are so fucking amazing for this show. Like there's this coloring thing they do with their hair where they all have like standard like candy anime hair color, like a red, a yellow, and like a pale green seafoam kind of color. But then they also have like highlights like underneath the hair. Like the red has like a green highlight underneath it. The yellow has like purple highlights, and then the green has, I think, like pink highlights, I think. And they're just so incredibly cool and memorable. And just the general designs of the characters are so incredibly cute and interesting to look at and wonderful. I really like this show. This show made me feel real nice. There is one more thing I want to talk about. In the final episode, one of the characters has an internship in America, and immediately, the hospital she goes to is hectic and understaffed, and oh boy, as an American, do I feel that. As someone who has been having constant health problems for the past 3 weeks, oh boy, do I feel that. So they really nailed that part of the American healthcare system. But yeah, this show is just so incredibly fun and exciting and uplifting. I really like this show. It is definitely going to be one of my favorites from the year. Alright, just finished all of Mob Psycho 100, Season 3, the finale to Mob Psycho, and what a finale it was. Man, still trying to distill my exact thoughts down into what I thought of this series, but I think it was really interesting that pretty much all of this season revolved around the idea of honesty, in terms of like both being honest with other people and being honest with yourself. In terms of with other people, we have the whole Psycho Helmet subplot with Dimple and Mob, which I didn't expect to cry over the lamest t-shirt design I've ever fucking seen, but I kind of did. Like, that moment where it was like I had absolutely no fucking clue where the Psycho Helmet plotline was going, and to have it end with Dimple being the one who was most honest with Mob about his shirt, and that being like the thing that binds these two characters together, and that they are like honest with each other about these things. That was just so fucking cool. Loved that reveal. Also, that normally when like anime says like, wow, this character's like sense of fashion is kind of lame, I'll be like, not really, but in this case, holy shit, that shirt is lame. Holy crap. It was so bad. It was so bad. And like watching all the other characters be like, you sure you want to wear that? You sure? But not being totally upfront with him about, hey, that's not a great shirt. Man, I just really loved the resolution of that plot line and how it just sort of spiraled out into being honest about their relationship to this cult that they accidentally started, Dimple's relationship to power and what he actually wants to do, versus how he wants to interact with Mob and just be friends with him. Really enjoyed that. It is good. And then the second half of the series is, well, more like the last like 4 episodes. The back third of this season is about honesty with yourself. In the case of Mob coming to terms with this psychotic, like uncontrollable power within him. The idea of being free to use his powers and not being afraid of hurting other people with them. Just being completely free-spirited about it. While also contrasting that with Mob's like more docile personality of not wanting to hurt people. I am not going to be able to completely like explain how nuanced this take was. This is probably the most like in-depth and nuanced take on there is good and bad inside of you, inside of everyone, like that concept. This is probably like one of the most like detailed takes on that I've seen, period. And I loved it. It was just such a great resolution to it, and having the final like solution to pulling Mob back out of this like psychotic break being Reagan also reconciling with the fact that he is a con man directly to Mob, like acknowledging that and apologizing for that. I really brought everything full circle in that. I also really like that it was kind of this was kind of implied, it kind of was implied in season 2 that Mob found out that Reagan was a con man, but they never really went anywhere with it. And so in this one, in this like final episode, it's kind of confirmed, like, yeah, Mob kind of knew from that point on, but was just didn't want to acknowledge it for one reason or another. So that tied up a loose end that I was curious about throughout this series. And yeah, this is just such a incredibly excuse me, just some incredibly detailed and stellar character writing. Mob is such an incredibly fascinating character with the immense amount of complications going on inside of him. I loved how they finally got down to the nitty-gritty, the true core of Mob as a character. Loved that. And I also love that they continued to build on what I would call the Superman theme that Mob has been going on with. I made a video for season 2 of 12 Days of Anime where I covered the first 2 seasons of Mob Psycho 100. It was called Becoming Superman, I think. You can go back and watch that. It's probably still good. I need to go back and rewatch it just to see my exact thoughts on it. But basically, it's like, by the end of season 2, Mob is doing his best to become like Superman, to become the person who can save everyone. But he wasn't quite there yet. And I won't say season 3 kind of, I won't say it abandons that metaphor, but it takes it in a different direction. It takes it in the direction of like, you can't be Superman if you can't save yourself. If you can't be honest with yourself, you cannot save other people. If you can't be honest with other people, like the Dimple Psycho Helmet plotline, you can't help them. You can't save them. So I really like how it kind of took kind of a very interesting left turn with this. Which was kind of this season overall. Like, I really had... This is one of the few series where I'm like, I have literally no idea what is going to happen. Like, what direction it's going to take. And it's not like a particularly complicated plot line to understand. It's just... It's so good at just like keeping you enough in the dark to not predict everything right away. Now personally, I don't consider being able to predict like big climactic moments, like the general gist of big climactic moments. I don't consider being able to predict that to be a fault. But not being able to predict that, I would say, is also a plus. And this season just constantly kept me guessing, just constantly had me in a state of like, trust the plan. One knows what he's doing with these characters. Just trust where it's going to go. And I was very satisfied with where it went. I will say there are two like minor complaints I have about this series overall. One, the big climactic plot line. Mob's like rampage, I think, went on for a little too long, or actually quite a bit too long, because it goes on for like 2.5 episodes. It's of just him storming through Seasoning City, just completely wrecking shit. And it's just like one battle after another. It's like Hanazawa gets his battle in, Suzuki gets his battle in, Ritsu gets his battle in, the bodybuilders get their battle in, and then finally Reagan gets his time in. It got pretty bloated, unfortunately, so it did start to drag in the lead up to the final Reagan moment. So that was a little unfortunate. I didn't dislike it, but there were points where I was kind of like, okay, let's go. But also it kind of wrote itself into that corner where it kind of had to do that because it had to wrap up a lot of these character plot lines. We had to have the Ritsu reveal of like, again, another like thing about honesty. Ritsu being honest about how he wants to relate to his brother, what kind of relationship to his older brother he wants to have. So you had to have that one in there. You kind of had to have the bodybuilders in there to be like, hey, Mob has like developed a pretty solid friend group that really cares about him. If I had to cut something, I probably would have cut the Hanazawa fight down, because that was like a whole episode, I think. Almost. You kind of had to have the Suzuki plotline in there to be like the bad guy from Season 2 repaying his debt to Mob for saving him. And also like him finally being honest with what he wants to do, and that he wants to be with his family. So, which is one of the reasons why he doesn't ultimately sacrifice himself, and he just like leaves with his son. I thought that was a really cool moment. So yeah, but yeah, that last stretch felt repetitive and dragged out through circumstances that it really couldn't do away with, unfortunately. And my other kind of complaint about this season is just episode 8 in general felt a little bit sloppy in terms of its presentation. Something about it, the pacing of it, specifically the micro pacing of it, like the shot to shot stuff felt a little wonky. And this was one of the few episodes where it was like, oh, the character designs actually feel really rough. as opposed to like the regular, like intentional rough of this series. Other than that, though, this series looks fucking phenomenal as usual. I still think the peak fight. I'd have to rewatch the whole series, but I think peak fight was still season 2. Both of the big fights in season 2, the whatever that dream sequence fight was halfway through the season, and then like the Suzuki fight at the end. But the fights in this were still absolutely fucking phenomenal. The Dimple fight at the end, where Dimple's facing off against the Divine Tree, so goddamn good. And Mob just completely wrecking shit as he goes through this city. Hella fun. Like, the Reagan chase sequence at the end was super fun. The Suzuki fight was really well done. Of this season, though, I think the Dimple fight is probably the best one. Just so incredibly explosive with color and with cinematography. That's another thing I noticed about this season in particular. It's probably true for the other seasons, but I just wasn't... my cinema brain was not mature enough at the time to notice it right away, but the shots in this show are just so goddamn good. The framing, the camera angle, the way things move is just so fucking impeccable. This really solidifies that Mob Psycho 100 is, like, across the board, is one of the best anime productions, period. It looks so good so often. Even in this, like, the dire straits of the anime industry that we're in right now, it looks so fucking good. Which is probably why it took 3 years to come out after season 2. Yeah, season 2 was 2019, I think. And then season 3 was at the end of 2022, obviously. Which is, I would say, is like the healthy production schedule. Especially for something this high a quality. I also, again, much like Bocchi the Rock, the way it just breaks away from the traditional 2D medium to do some really great, like, alternative art design, the paint on glass stuff, just these extreme abstract color things, just so incredibly gorgeous to look at almost all the time. Like, really, it was only episode 8, really, where I was like, this isn't quite as good. Although the end credits sequence for episode 8 was fucking amazing. Just so damn good. That alien sequence, amazing. Yeah. It's Mob Psycho 100. I don't know what else to say about that. Incredibly solid ending for an incredibly solid show. I really like that it's like we got this. It really did combine the big fuck off action finale and the very heartfelt, down to earth emotional finale damn near perfectly. This is a show for the ages. Easily one of my favorite anime of all time. I think after season 2 it was sitting somewhere in my top 25, and I think it's definitely staying up there. So yeah, loved this season. If for some reason you haven't gotten around to Mob Psycho yet, you should absolutely do it. It's one of the most solid anime productions of all time. That was a lot. Okay, so I just watched all of Made in Abyss, Golden City of the Scorching Sun, the second season of Made in Abyss, which is actually the third entry in the franchise because of the movie smashed in the middle of that. Now, I knew I was going to be in for a lot based on the first season and the movie, both of which had me sobbing uncontrollably at some point. Um, so I kind of knew what I was in for with this new season. Now I will say, I did cry. I think I cried twice. Neither of them were on the same cathartic release as the first season or the movie, but I did cry. And I wanted to throw that out there. I think maybe it's just because I kind of expect this from Made in Abyss by now, so I'm starting to grow accustomed to it. But I will the moments again. If you're somehow made it this far into this video series and you don't know that these are spoiler heavy, there's your warning. This is spoiler heavy. Anyway, the two moments that I did cry, unsurprisingly, basically the same moment as season one, where Nanachi lets go of Miti and Miti disappears. And then the second one was Vueko's death and Fapta coming to terms with that. So, by the way, while we're on her, Fapta, her voice actress, Misaki Kuno, fucking phenomenal performance. One of the best probably the best performance of the year, maybe. Outside of, like, I don't know. I don't know who else. I forgot the name of the person who played Uta in the One Piece movie, but maybe it would be her. I don't know. But just the incredibly powerful performance that she gives in this. And apparently she's been around a while. She's been around since, like, season 1 Log Horizon. She plays Sarara in that. She's the red-haired little lolly in that. Apparently she's known for playing lollies. I looked up her repertoire after this, and she's played a lot of characters that I am very familiar with, so I'm surprised I did not recognize her voice at this point. But goddamn, is this her best performance or what? This was the just unbelievably raw emotion that she exudes, whether it's anger or immense sadness or joy and just general, like, happiness and aloofness, just pain. Holy shit. And that added so much to her character. This, I guess, fateful hero? Fateful antagonist? Depending on which side you view this from, because and that kind of leads into kind of what sets this season apart, at least in terms of how it's written, at least for me personally, is that this was just almost 24/7 dread. Like, well, not 24/7 dread. There are definitely some moments of levity, especially in the beginning, but there was just this constant sense of oppressiveness and this feeling that everything is going to snap at a moment's notice. Which is kind of definitely the point, I guess. This is like, you kind of know from the beginning that something, the city that they land, that Rico and Reg and Nanachi land in, is so very obviously set up as being something that has an immense darkness at the center of it. And oh boy, is there a darkness at the center of it. And so you're just constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's what this season felt like. Again, maybe it's just because I'm so used to what Made in Abyss does at this point. But this was just tension and dread for so much of the series. And it became so... This became physically taxing to watch. Like, not in a bad way, in a good way. Like this series drains me in a way that I don't think any other series can. Like this series has such an immense deep darkness to it that never feels edgy at all. Like there's never anything in this that feels like it's pointing out and like, look how dark this is. Isn't this dark? It never feels like that ever. Like, and it's never felt like that. And I'm happy that it's continuing to be like that. It never feels like it's just being dark for the sake of being dark. There is a set of rules that this world follows that if you break them, bad things happen to you, and it just keeps adding more and more rules to this world. And in both a narrative and thematic sense, it is just so immensely dark and all-encompassing, and it feels like you are being swallowed up by this setting, by this abyss, and you're just constantly fighting to get out. Again, in a good way. You're constantly fighting to get to the end, to see everything through and hope that everyone is still alive at the end of the series. So far, most of them are. Not all of them. A lot of really cool characters died by the end of this series, by the end of this season. And it was very sad. I think like Ma in particular, that was a rough one. I was just like, oh, that's unfortunate, and it was done in such a very tactful way of just Ma just kind of disappearing, and you by this point it's already established what is happening to all of the residents of the city by that point, so you know what happened, but they don't show it because I think they understand that you're so attached to Ma by this point that would just be tactless. And again, it's not edgy. It's just fucking dark. And speaking of Ma, that was probably the moment near the beginning of the series where I was like, oh, this is going to hurt a lot. The moment where Ma accidentally like crushes Minya a little bit, and so all of Ma's possessions are taken away, and you see the doll just get shredded into nothing and disappear. That wrecked me emotionally, and that was only episode 3. That's what this fucking series does. It is a lot. Just like the ever-expanding setting for this series. This setting is a fucking lot. I absolutely loved the setup, the way this city is set up, the rules for how money works. Honestly, I wish they would have had like a couple more bartering interactions just so you could see more of that, because that was just fascinating on its own. And it really digs into what is always been like the core theme of Made in Abyss ever since Miti's death in season 1. It's never been subtle. Which I'm fine with. I don't care whether a theme is subtle or not, as long as it's good and well executed. But the theme is always for Made in Abyss has always been treasure, and more so figuring out what is truly precious to you. Unironically, Made in Abyss is about the friends we made along the way. Unironically, for as fucking dark as this show is, it still has that shonen mindset at the center of this. Even though this is not shonen at all. I'm very positive that this is not a shonen series. But it has that stereotypical shonenness to it of the friends you made along the way. But it is probably the most sincere and heartfelt and deeply emotional version of that theme. This, like we had it with Nanachi and Miti in season 1. We had it with Riko and Prushka in the movie. And now we have it with pretty much everyone in this season, especially like in how just the core cast interacts, in particular, like with how Fapata and Reg interact, with how Vueko and Irumyui interact. That one goes pretty far beyond friendship, I would say, and more into like a mother-daughter relationship. But just precious things, precious connections, precious relationships, and what you will do to keep those relationships, what you will do to do right by those people that make you the happiest in the world. And God, I'm gonna need to watch this whole series a couple more times just to really dig deep into like the nitty gritty of it. Because while the core of the theme, the core idea is very obvious, the specifics of it, the like subtle nuances of it, of how different characters interact within that theme and how they display that theme in different ways, is very complex. So I'm definitely going to need to watch this one at least one more time, and hope that the dread does not kill me, because there is so much. I keep repeating myself, the show's so goddamn dark. But another unique thing about this season is we actually get a ton of flashback stuff in this. There's basically a secondary narrative woven into this season aside from the present day narrative, where we see like the past in, I think it's like 150 years ago at one point they say, where Vueko and Irumyui and their team are basically going down into the abyss and trying to survive, and then they eventually set up this city out of the corpse of Irumyui, which that whole segment was a lot. I think that was episodes 7 and 8, basically. Once they find, like, they've been weaving the narrative into it for like for the most part up through episode 8, but it's 7 and 8 where they really like get into the truly awful shit of Irumyui. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Who's, I guess, this barren child who's been cast out from her village. Basically gives birth to these weird abyss creatures every day, that eventually die because they have no way to consume food or oxygen or water or anything. And so it's this constant trauma of birth and death and birth and death, until she eventually just transforms into this living city. And the Wakuyan, Wazukyan? I have no clue. The guy, the leader of the party, basically eventually using the corpses of her children to keep the party alive, and the regret that comes from that from everyone else involved. Belef, in particular, being just so incredibly distraught over that. This show is a lot. This show is a lot. And of course, thus we come to Fapata, who might be my favorite character in the series up to this point. Just the last truly living child of Irumyui, who basically inherited all of the knowledge of what happened to Irumyui, except for Vueko, which was itself a very interesting thing that really got me to tear up at the end, where she's like, this was the one thing that mom wanted to keep to herself, the most precious thing. That fucking killed me. But yeah, this notion of this basically revenge child, set up to who sole purpose is to destroy this village and take revenge for her mother. And in all honesty, I want to say she's like totally within her rights to do that because um I think at one point everyone is kind of in on like they know what they're doing to Irumyui and they're just doing it in order to survive, which like again, they're doing it to survive. So this is one of the most masterful things about Made in Abyss is it is completely morally gray. Like there is no morality here. There is no guiding compass of morals here. Which makes Riko such an interesting protagonist too, because she actually not. I wouldn't even say it makes her an interesting protagonist. It just makes her the best protagonist for the series because she does not give a fuck about the morality of whatever's going on. She's just in it for the adventure. Whether that makes her a good person or not, up to you to decide. Probably not, but it's up to you. But that allows the series to really dive into these immensely complex moral dilemmas where we have Fapata, who is probably very much in her right to take revenge on these people that did this to her mother, but on the same end, these people had to do it to survive in the abyss, and it's been like over 100 years at this point, and they've just kind of settled into this lifestyle in this city built on Irumyui's corpse, where they are living comfortably and thriving, and they have their own culture that, for the most part, isn't a hostile culture. It's a very weird culture that bases everything on the concept of value, but it's not like an outright hostile culture. So, yeah, again, this is one of those things where I'd have to watch it again because there's just so much nuance and complexity to this that it makes my fucking head spin. And that's what makes this show so fucking good, aside from the really dark shit and the really emotional shit. But yeah, Fapata, I keep drifting off topic. Fapata is just awesome. Again, a lot of that is because of Misaki Kuno doing an immensely strong job with her performance, and just the way that this character constantly has shit taken away from her through no fault of her own, for the most part, and the way that she slowly just... I think it's she. I'm not entirely sure. It's very much coded as she. It could be they, but anyway, the way that Fapata just constantly has stuff taken away, and the way that she just morphs over the course of the series in response to all of these things, both in good and bad ways. Oh my... I really love this character, if I'm being honest. She's great. Now, I think probably the most contentious part of this series would probably be the Miti subplot with Nanachi. Because honestly, it kind of just... that part kind of just, like, fizzles out until the big emotional climax for it, because it's like... I think they bring back Miti after Reg finally killed her in Season 1. And so, on the one hand, it feels like we are repeating the same emotional beat as Season 1, but I think they do change it up enough for it to be the best it could be, considering those circumstances. It is different enough to feel like we're not just completely retreading new ground, but also there's the part of, like, they're supposed to buy Nanachi back from Belef because Nanachi sells herself to Belef in order to get Miti. But at one point, Belef's is just like, you're just free to go. You can just leave. And I mean, it's because the city is collapsing and the force field is eventually dissipating, and all the stuff that Belef created there is going to disappear because of the force field disappearing. Well, actually, I think it's everybody in the city. Yeah, everyone in the city is eventually going to who has taken their power from the city is going to disappear eventually. So it is definitely, at least for me, it was the most contentious part. It might be the part that keeps this from being a 10 when we get to the ratings, but we'll get there. I'm going to need to sit on this a little bit more. But, man, this show is just so damn complex and so fucking cool. Especially on the visual end, because holy fucking shit, this is a goddamn beautiful show. This is easily the best looking show of the year that I've seen so far. I haven't seen anything from the fall season yet, obviously, but I doubt anything's going to top this. This is fucking gorgeous. The setting and the background art, much like the first season and the movie, is just so fucking cool and unique and gorgeous in a very grotesque way. The absolute, like, disgustingness of the reds and greens and, like, vomity whites of this city and how it all blends together. It's like the perfect combination of ickiness while also still being really cool. Now, I think this might be the most that Made in Abyss has made use of CG, but it is definitely only in the most necessary places. Like, it's the only things that I noticed that are in CG are the turbanid dragons, which are there's Tachikata, I forget what his name is, the robotic thing, and then Belaf's snake form are pretty much the only CG things in the series because they are so immensely complex in design. And for the most part, I think the compositing on the CG was still pretty solid overall, so it wasn't a huge distraction. Not really enough for me to like say that it took away from the series in any way. And because even aside from that, fuck, the action scenes in this series are so goddamn good. The overall just character designs are just almost always on point and fucking gorgeous. There's so many different hollow designs in this city. I guess, are they technically hollows? I don't know. Who knows? But just the immense amount of monster designs in this series. I wonder if they got Ko Yoshinari to come back for this. I'll have to check to see if he's still doing monster designs. Cause well, yeah, I'll have to check to see. But it's so very abyssy, and just so damn gorgeous, and I'm losing it. I've been talking about this series for so goddamn long at this point. But of course I can't leave without talking about the fucking soundtrack because Kevin Penkin is back. It's more Kevin Penkin Made in Abyss music. Although I will say the insert song he wrote, Gravity, it starts with the same line that starts Part of Your World from The Little Mermaid. It starts with I want to know where the people are. So that was a little distracting if you're familiar with The Little Mermaid to any degree, which I'm not very familiar with The Little Mermaid, but even I still remember that. So that was weird. Aside from that, the song is fucking beautiful, especially when it gets into the gravity section of it. Kevin Penkin's a fucking genius with this stuff. And I love the way he uses bass because that's very much part of this immense darkness to this series. Just the auditory sound of darkness. Yeah, that was just a whole bunch of rambling about Made in Abyss. I'm sure there's some stuff I missed that I would love to talk about, that I might talk about later in a full analysis series. Or one video, who knows? I definitely want to talk about this series in a more scripted manner. So we'll get to that when the time comes. Man, I'm not even sure what to say at this point. Well, I just finished, obviously, all of Kaguya-sama Ultra Romantic, the third season of Kaguya-sama, and what else can I say other than peak? It's peak fiction, boys. Absolute pinnacle of the rom-com genre. It is just leaps and bounds better than anything I've seen from the anime rom-coms in my 10 years of hardcore anime watching. Better than Toradora, better than Chunibyo, better than just about anything else. Better than Karikano. It is the peak of this genre, man. It is so incredibly ambitious and fun and hilarious and just good vibes. It's just so fucking good. Where the fuck do I even start with this? Right out the gate, I was like gasping for air because of how hard I was laughing. Like, from the first gag of this show, it is just immediately immensely hilarious and just so clever in its timing and its wordplay and its visuals. The visuals are so off the wall insane and ambitious for a rom-com. Like, not that the standard should change across genre, but I mean, with anime rom-coms, we're so used to very standard visuals, very straightforward stuff. Obviously, there are exceptions and all that, but Kaguya just blows everything out of the water, from how it plays with the frame, how it plays with animation, how it plays with color and cinematography and blocking, and just literally everything is just so off the wall and fun and just so incredibly competent, more than competent, well above competent. In the past, this season I've talked a lot about what I call rainbow vomit, which is where anime will just sort of like throw a bunch of Technicolor bullshit on the screen to try and make it look interesting, but most of the anime that try to do that have no sense for color direction or color theory whatsoever. Kaguya-sama is so incredibly adept at color theory. Like, you can see the building blocks of color theory in its particular brand of rainbow vomit, and it is so incredibly pleasing to the eye and so vibrant and cool and amazing. I will never get tired of looking at this anime. Every frame is a painting. It really is. It is so incredibly gorgeous and beautiful. Like, on top of the just sheer amount of ideas it has the technical competency to accomplish those ideas. This is such an incredibly competent and talented crew, and just a very healthy crew as well. Just so ambitious and able to accomplish that ambition. So much of the animation in this is fucking phenomenal. That final scene on the clock tower was just so beautifully shot. probably one of the best uses of CG objects I've seen in a very long time, with all of those balloons. Just the texture for the CGs is so good that it doesn't even matter that I can tell that it's CG, because the lighting is so fucking perfect and the cinematography makes it so, distracts you so much from the fact that it's CG that it doesn't even fucking factor into it. This is such an incredibly gorgeous anime, from the colors to the framing to the character designs. It's all perfect. And speaking of characters, holy shit, these are some of the best anime characters I've ever seen. I'm not even going to qualify it with best rom-com characters. These are some of the best anime characters I've ever seen. Fucking Shirogane's flashback episode was just so incredibly in character, but also very revealing about his motivations and how he first fell in love with Kaguya. It's so incredible. Just the way that all of these characters bounce off of each other constantly without even missing a beat. I am starting to see how some people might not like the characters in Kaguya in a very specific way, in that a lot of the humor is kind of mean, but it's not like hurtful mean. It's not like they are trying to hurt each other when they like do these little jabs at each other's like weaknesses and personalities and stuff. Like, when I started thinking about it, like, my friend group kind of talks the same way a lot of the time. Like, we will take these like very hard jabs at each other sometimes, but we don't like fully mean it. We don't hate each other. And so I see a lot of my friend group in how the student council at this school interacts with each other. These are very good friends, and they just as often help each other as they do take jabs at each other. Like, the evolution of Ishigami and Ino's relationship as this series went on was just so very natural, but also incredibly fun and lively, and I loved it. Not to say that I hope that ship sails in particular. I know Ishigami's pursuing Tsubame right now, and that might take off somewhere. But I'm a very big fan of the enemies to lovers trope. I would like to see them succeed, and I think Akasaka has planted enough seeds for that to maybe be true, but we'll see. But speaking of all the relationship stuff, I do have to immediately say the Culture Festival arc is one of the best arcs in all of anime. Like, in all of anime and all manga, I'm just gonna say that. Like, this deserves to be talked about when you see, like, all these other, like, tier lists of, like, best shonen arcs, best seinen arcs. I want the Culture Festival to be discussed the same way that Chimera Ant is, the same way that Golden Age is, the same way that, like, all of these, like, landmark arcs in anime are talked about. The Culture Festival arc in this show deserves to be talked about the same way, because it is so immensely dense and complex while also being non-stop entertaining, with a series of one-off skits that somehow mesh together perfectly. Everything builds on each other, even the lead up to the Culture Festival arc. That's the thing about this particular season of Kaguya-sama, is, like, the first two seasons, it's mostly just episodic adventures. Like, the characters do grow over the course of both seasons, but the plot itself is mostly episodic until you get to, like, the finales. Not so in season 3. Ultra Romantic is very much a lot more story-driven than the previous two arcs, which is kind of rare for a rom-com in general, but it pulls it off really fucking well. Just, like, the back half of this anime is one big Culture Festival arc, and it's so dense with different storylines going on at the same time that all end up interconnecting by the end of it, for the most part. Like, we got Kaguya trying to plan out how she's going to confess to Shirogane, and Shirogane planning out his confession to Kaguya, and just all the different pieces that are like interwoven, like all the different parts of Shirogane's plan are so well foreshadowed earlier episodes. Like, some are pretty obvious, like it's obviously it turns out that Shirogane is going to be the phantom thief that stole all the balloons and stuff. That part's pretty obvious, but all the more minor parts of the plan, like how it was him that submitted the request for the campfire, they really throw you off by making you think that Inu did it, but it turns out that he did it instead as part of his master plan, and so fucking good, and I love it, and just everything about the way this arc is interwoven together. It's so, I would need an hour to dissect all of the stuff in this arc, but it all is so perfect, and it all culminates in them finally getting together. And I will admit, I was a little concerned right at the very end that they were going to throw a wrench into it, but thankfully they saved it with the very last shot of this show. God, I just fucking love Kaguya-sama, and the idea, the main central theme of this anime is really starting to come out now. This idea that you just have to do it because someone else is going to come out and sweep your love interest out from under you if you don't make the confession. We see that with Kawashigi, I think her name is, and Maki. I don't remember some of these side character names, but that's the other thing. They also introduce so many side characters in this season. Not too many, but they introduce enough to make this even more dense without overloading it. That's another thing that some other rom-coms have issues with, where they'll front load like the first couple chapters with a bunch of brand new characters that you constantly have to keep track of, and then the audience eventually gets bored with. Kaguya is much more deliberate with how it introduces characters, and it really pays off in the end. And this immense drive to get to confess. Like, we finally have a reversal of the initial premise of the show. Like, we want to get the other person to confess, but it's finally gotten to the point where they realize, no, I have to confess, or else they'll slip away from me. And I'm very curious how the next season of this is going to play out, with Shirogane being accepted to Stanford well before he normally would be. He's graduating a year early, but now he's offered this to Kaguya to come with him, and we'll see how that plays out with her family, with her grades, with everything. Man, I fucking love this show. This is a 10 out of 10. It's fucking incredible. Just watch Kaguya-sama. I'm definitely going to make a video about this soon. I have to. It's just that fucking good. This is peak fiction.
Alright, just chiming back in at the end here for some quick statistic rundowns on all the stuff from my list. As you can see from all the numbers on the screen here, looks like Fall was far and away my favorite season, both in terms of score and in terms of shows completed. In terms of like the actual completion rates, looks like, yeah, Fall and Summer were definitely my preference in terms of like shows that I was motivated to finish, but not by that much. The spread's not hugely different. Fall got 21, Summer got 20, Spring got 16, and Winter got 16, so it's not a massive spread. Everything's like pretty even. The score difference, however, is something I was not expecting. Winter and Summer are pretty close on the low end. Winter got a 6.69, Summer got a 6.65, and then Spring and Fall are like almost dead on on the higher end. Spring got a 7.13 and fall got a 7.14. I was expecting winter to be the lowest by far because it only had one show in my top 10. But I think it's because a lot of the shows from the summer season that I finished were on the lower end. Some movies and OVAs that I didn't think were particularly good, but were short enough for me to finish regardless. I was also expecting spring to just barely edge out fall, but it looks like it was the other way around, which is not totally unexpected, especially considering I finished the most shows in the fall season. So that pretty interesting statistical rundown. Now, I should note that halfway through doing the seasonal wrap-up show in the summer season, I started doing 12 days of anime work. So I don't know if there was like a significant change in my attitude towards anime after that, but it is interesting to note. Also, I do believe summer and fall had more movies than the other seasons. I'm not entirely sure, but I think that's the case. Which brings us to the second set of statistics here. Which also I'm a little bit surprised by as well. This is probably this is by far the most shows that I've finished. Most anime that I finished in a single year from new stuff. I was expecting there to actually be more like of these two other categories, movies / single OVAs, which had 19, and then OVA series and shorts, which had 6. But I still finished almost 50 full series from the year. I finished 48 full core anime, or like full Netflix drop anime. And then in terms of like the split between new IPs in terms of anime adaptations versus like repeat IPs, again, I'm surprised that I'm not surprised that the split is what it is. I was about what is that in terms of, that's about 60% of the shows of the anime that I finished are new IPs, and about 40% are returning ones. That sounds about right. A lot of the stuff that I finished was like sequels and spin-offs and stuff like that. And finally, we have our top studios here. I made it is top 6 cut off just because everything below this was like 2 or less shows from each series. Not at all surprised that these are the ones that made the cut. A1 and Cloverworks. Well, A1 just like pumps out shows. Not so much any more recently, but they kind of have that reputation. And then Cloverworks just has so many incredibly strong showings this year. Stuff like Bocchi the Rock, I think, and I believe My Dress Up Darling was Cloverworks. But I also don't want to discount A1 either, because they had Kaguya, they had 86, a lot of good showings. JC Stav, on the other hand, is the one that just kind of brute forces their way in here with shows that I still think are good. I mean, I finished them, but definitely on the lower end of quality in terms of stuff. And then like the show ones where I finished 3. Mappa obviously was going to make the list. Chainsaw Man, Jujutsu Kaisen 0. Dance Dance Danseur was probably the big dark horse for me. Toei, not kind of surprised that they made the list, but also not surprised when I see what it is that made the list, because it was 2 movies and then Precure. And then Wit Studio, yeah, not surprised that this made the list. Ranking of Kings, the Pokemon short, Hisuian Snow. This was the only one where like I counted one anime for 2 studios because Spy Family was both Wit Studio and Cloverworks, and it seemed like a pretty even split in terms of like who the staff came from, at least from what I can see in the surface. So I just gave them both one for that. So yeah, that is my wrap up for the 2022 year of anime. So now it's time to start on 2023, because it is September now by the time this video goes up. And I would like to get through at least another season before this next season ends. I'm so far behind, but look forward to that, I guess. My name is Ember, and I will see you next time.